some kind of reaction, an emotional reaction myself from whatever idea I'm trying, that I can move on to the next stage. So it's a giant experiment for me. I don't know what I'm making at the time. I just trust in my process that if I follow my instincts and follow what I react to emotionally, I know that I'll end up with something that sounds like my music. And that's as far as I think about it, So it will be, if we're talking more technically, it will be a loop put into just an arrange page within Logic, and then I'll add another loop to it, and then I'll start to arrange that into something that, some kind of very loose structure of a piece of music. Then I'll bring in maybe some vocal sample which could easily get discarded later. And it's just a continuing process like that. Perhaps I'll suddenly switch the PA on.
Okay, now, can you remember everything you just said and say?
Sorry if you couldn't hear any of that, but it was really boring anyway, so don't worry.
No, hold on. My job is normally... Let me drink more club matcha and see if my memory comes back. No, my job is normally to... That was breathing club matcha. My job is normally to kind of hear what you're saying repeat. So what I was kind of hearing, we're talking a little bit about what you're doing with these performance loops is trying to play stuff in and listen to it, and kind of... What I thought was nice was you're talking about listening to what sounds like you. So some of this material, you play it back, presumably doesn't quite sound like you, or isn't quite working.
That's not quite what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that what we end up with has my kind of signature. Yeah. Actually, often when you're working with sounds, you don't want it to sound like yourself, because you think, oh, I've done that before, boring, I want something new. So really I'm just looking for something that excites me, and I let one thing go to the next until I've got something that's more of a whole piece of music, and I know that process will mean it sounds like me in the end. That's what I'm saying, really. Yeah. How we get there is really an unknown thing to me, just like to other people. I don't really know where I'm going until I get there. But that's the exciting part of making music for me. And just to sort of elaborate on that a little bit, my interest is orchestration. So that means finding sounds that go with each other, that don't get in the way of each other, and that do the job of creating the atmosphere you want to get, or you're hoping to achieve. And that can be, simple things like spatial awareness, making sure that if you've got one dense sound in the mid-range over here, you don't put another one in the other side of the stereo at the same time here. You mix your sound picture in such a way that each sound has its place in a very wide picture. So I'm always thinking about those things when I'm putting these samples together. It's not just layering one on top of another, like a sort of dirty hip-hop record. I need my music to be more precise and more detailed and more clear than that. But I do love some hip-hop records.
Yeah, I don't know if that was applause for loving dirty hip-hop records or...
I love dirty
hip-hop records. Yeah. That makes sense. I'm really anxious to hear what people are... There's so many cameras pointed at us now that I kind of want to take a question from the front row, who are also the only people who heard the first 15 minutes of what you just said. So I'm curious.
Any questions, anyone?
Questions, especially this kind of questions about processing things.
He's got one. These days, he asked if I master my own music. These days, a little bit, more recently, I've been kind of mastering a few things just to save money, really, because mastering in studios can be quite expensive. But there's a guy I use who has also worked on some Depeche Mode, the re-versions of the old albums, Simon Hayworth, who I think has got a great set of ears. I really like what he does. And, he agrees with my thinking about not too much compression or limiting dynamics within the sound, and just allowing the music to speak for itself, really, no radio compression and all this stuff. But working with him means I've learned a bit about mastering myself. I don't have the technology you really need, like super precise vowel equipment, but I know roughly how the record should sound. Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Other questions from the front row? The few select people who heard some of the nice stuff that was said at the beginning.
When will Recoil be live again? I guess I have to make some more music first, and I've been putting it off, but I will, I think, in the new year really this time get into that studio. I don't know if it will be an album or a soundtrack, I don't know what it will be yet, but I will make some new music, and if I can get that finished and satisfactory for me, then I hope that I would try and get and present it on the road again, but in maybe a very different way this time. It's difficult for me to envisage doing the same thing again with this kind of laptop and film presentation idea. So I think next time it could be something quite different, but I just don't know what it will be yet. Anyway, this is just a short chat, okay? I'm going to be back a bit later on to do the full thing after the second film's finished.